What is going on, guys and girls? How doing today? It's Angry Roleplayer once again. I want to show you guys the updated Warpath Void Knight build that I created over 6 months ago, and it was my very first build. And I recently got back to the game, wanted to see just how the build has survived. Does still does anything, or how viable is that, assuming all the massive changes that are coming over and over to the Last Epoch. And surprisingly, the build holds up really well. And I made a couple of improvements that I want to talk about. And first of all, I want to say, guys, if you have never played Last Epoch on this specific setup, this is pretty much, as you can see, is like Whirlwind and your Diablo 2 and Diablo 3, or like Cyclone and Path of Exile. But aside from this cycloning itself, it also does there's also a separate attack in this build called Erasing Strike, which has a big slam, like Earthquake, AoE based attack, which does quite a lot of damage. So overall the build is pretty balanced. It's just a bit of spinning, moving, as well as slamming. The sustain is pretty nice. I did a couple of upgrades, and the changes from the original build is that I switched from the one-hander and the shield from stacking block to just going two-hander, and I also got rid of the volatile reversal for my mana issues, and just decided I'm gonna solve mana issues in a different way. I decided I'm gonna just purely regenerate mana instead of going the volatile reversal, and just prefer like more other complex ways to sustain my mana. So this is what I did. Overall, I like the build. It's very flexible. It's pretty decent firepower. The Warpath itself doesn't really do a lot of damage. It's like 1,500 sometimes of the crits. But the Erasing Strike does well over 10,000 slams, and it can double that as well. So overall, it's a pretty nice, solid build with decent amount of damage. So let's take a look. Before we go further into the video, I would like to stop for a second and thank my Patreon supporters and Twitch subscribers. You guys have no fucking idea how much I'm thankful for you. If you just stop for a second and put likes on this video and share it with your friends, it will be already an insane amount of support, and I will be forever grateful to every one of you. Thank you so much, and remember,
you, yes you, are making a difference.
let's talk about the main class, which is Sentinel, and this is the first thing that we're starting with. So for the Sentinel, we will be taking the Juggernaut for the increased armor and some strength, because both Warpath and the Erasing Strike scale with strength, and Erasing Strike is also void melee and Warpath is physical melee. So in the end, we'll be scaling like physical, melee, strength, and void damage as well. So take the Juggernaut, then try to take Relentless for pure damage, then get a little bit of Aegis of Renewal, and then get a little bit of Iron Mastery. Iron Mastery, by the way, is very, I think, underrated, and it's pretty damn strong. Literally 5p chance when you hit something, when you kill something, or when you get hit is 30% more damage, is quite a lot. The last one is Retaliation, 25% increased damage, and this is double if you have blocked. So we will be stacking by like 20-25% chance of block with dual wielding. So eventually we will block something and get up to 50% increased damage. That's about it here. As soon as you get 20, transition into the Void Knight, and this is where all the fun begins. Abyssal Endurance for the health and void protection, then stacking Sword and Sorrow and Steel. This is pure void damage and increased phase. This is good for the both of the skills. Vault Eater for the Leech, just in case you will not be able to stack Leech early on your weapon and on the amulet. This Leech really saves you a lot of health. Next is Void Blades, additional void damage and hit for the melee attacks. This is absolutely fucking insane in my opinion. This is literally like doubles your damage early on. Then transitioning into the Plate Spikes, armor and melee fist damage. Once again, this is flat melee fist damage, exceptionally strong. Don't forget to get Void Corruption for the crit multiplier per point in the Void Knight. As you can see, we have 60 now, so the 60 crit multi just for being a Void Knight. Then going over to the Doom Knight and Vow. Both just give strength and health, and this is like melee damage and increased armor. If we kill something, we'll be constantly killing something. That is fine. And the last one is practically that I started getting is Dread, increased void damage and increased movement speed, also fantastic for the movement skill, and for the erasing strike, because it's a pretty damn a lot of damage on the erasing strike. The last two that I took on the Void Knight is the Avatar of Regret, which basically reduces your attack speed with the Warpath, increases the mana cost of everything, but at the same time it give you like 10% chance to deal double damage with the Rising Strike, effectively making a second echoing attack. It's not really that big of a deal, it doesn't happen that often, but 10% chance for one simple node, I think it's a very good investment. And the next one that I got is the Void Flux. Once again, once per 30 seconds when your health is reduced to lower than 20%, send all enemies forward in 5 seconds. Not bad at all, once again. Another thing that I took is the Paladin. This is your second priority. I increase physical damage, fire damage, and physical penetration. Extremely important, because there's a lot of enemies with physical protection, so they take a while to kill with the physical damage, so this kind of reduces their resistance and penetrates the physical resistance they have. And the last one I'm taking a little bit slowly is the Bottle Harden on the Forge Guard, simply for the armor. You know, you need to sustain this high damage, and in the higher arena levels this is very important to have. That's about it. The first skill we'll be using on the right button is effectively your Whirlwind Cyclone that you probably are familiar with, and there's quite a little bit of a trick with the skill. First of all, it's a channeling melee physical movement strength skill. So it scales with all of this, so we need to scale melee damage, physical damage, as well as strength. And what I decided, eventually I'm going to be just doing two-handers simply for the damage, even though I will definitely not be getting as much toughness as with a shield, but the damage will be there because the two-handers have way more damage than the one-handers in this game. So what I'll be doing is going Reckless Combatant, then going Swayhander Rage Weighty, which is increased area of effect for our Cyclone. This is extremely nice. Then getting block chance for the pairing spin, 20% block chance, easy peasy. Then I took 2 on the Enduring Deflection and 5 to the Dark Nexus. Dark Nexus, guys, is extremely important for one reason. I'll explain why. So as you can see, Warpath is basically costs like 10 to start. 1 is increased by my passive, which is this shit. This is increased like 1%, so it's 11 now, so it doesn't matter. So what this gives is when you hit, you lose 10, and then you start spinning, you lose 20 per second. So it kind of drains your mana a little bit. With this thing, by default, if you take like this and will not take that, you will have 20 mana regen per second and 20 drain per second. So your Warpath effectively gains exactly 0. It equals, but at the same time you do not degen as well. So like the 0 regen, 0 degen. You effectively just stand still. You manage like stand still, but when you get this, you start degening, right? You get like more cost just to start spinning, so it cost starts 11. But in order to start regening, you either need to get some mana regen on the gear itself, or take this Unbound Storm. Warpath drains 1 less mana per second and deals increased damage. Eventually, I settled up on this idea, took 3 points there, and now I regen at least 3 mana per second all the time, even when I spin. This is extremely strong. This is what I personally recommend on the Warpath. The second skill is Rebook. This is purely the defensive channeling skill. When you stop channeling, you just gain a bunch of the very strong defensive buffs. First take Regenerative Shell, Augmented Plating, Brave the Elements, Protective Legacy, Burst of Speed, and Solemn Valve. This is all kind of mandatory and no other options there. So what I do is practically that I just cast it, then I start spinning and doing some slams. That's about it. The third is the Devouring Orb, and this is just for the boost. Unfortunately, there's not many other ways how you can actually boost your damage for this build, so this is one of the options. Void Adept you deal 60% increased damage while you have a devouring mode. So what I want to do is just have the orb and make it last as much as possible. In order to make it, we are taking hollow orb. Is basically last 50% more. At the same time, we are taking this. This is like mandatory abyssal juggernaut. So while I have the devouring orb, we have additional elemental protection, void protection, and 60% increased elemental protections and void protection. This is very strong. So first priority, this, that, this. This is like the most important. Like the other is kind of trash, in my opinion, not important, mostly whatever, guys, whatever you want. So this free is the only reason why we're taking devouring orb, to boost everything along with the protections. The fourth is the launch, and this is yet another like movement skill along with the Warpath, and at the same time this is another defensive layer. So what we're taking here is Tactician. Then Forge Orn increases armor and side avoidance for 4 seconds after you complete the launch. This makes you're invincible during lunging, very useful too. Then lunging might adds strength. So strength, guys, once again, Warpath and raising strike stacks with strength, so this is very important. And then a raiding charge, increase void and elemental protection for 4 seconds after you complete the launch. Once again, protection, and damage. That's about it. The last one is this. Absolutely unimportant, whatever, guys. Everything else not important at all. So the last one is the raising strike, and this is kind of a big dig damage in my opinion. Very hungry skill, at the same time incredibly strong. What I decided I'm gonna do here, I just want to stack as much damage as possible and kind of reduce the cost as much as possible. So what I took as merciful. This is pure damage for the enemies that are already damaged. So what I do is just spin a little bit inside of the mob and then just slam them with this big dick, and they just most likely just get wrecked. So what I took as basically a merciful erasure of the living, Epothian tactics. It's a cooldown, but the efficiency gets reduced by 50%. This is a pretty goddamn big deal. And the last thing that I took, which is important, is mana absorption. Recover 4 mana for each enemy you erase. So what you're gonna do is just slide into the pack with the Warpath, smack them really strong, everything devastates, and then you recover some mana. Other things that I have here as basically a Toon Strike, also very important, just reducing mana a little bit. Also Obliteration, Prophet's Onslaught. This is crit chance for your raising strike, as well as certain erasure for the crit multiplier. This all is to make your raising strike to be very strong, because it's like an invested skill. It needs to be very strong to effectively erase like enemies as much as possible to be somewhat viable. So that's it for the skills. So let's talk about the gear really quick, because the gear, to be honest, is still pretty mediocre, and I'm still looking for a better weapon. So what I have here is a two-hander Sovnia, and this is basically very high melee fist damage, very high base crit chance, with yet another melee critical strike chance base, which makes me kind of, you know, 35% crit chance. That's a lot. So effectively I like crit all the fucking time, and the only reason why I have this is yeah, for that. Melee damage leached as health, so I'm at pretty goddamn insanely tanky in density, and practically nothing can kill me unless it's a super strong like one shot going through all the defense. So the ideal stats on this will be indeed physical damage, but unfortunately this got fractured. I was unable to craft anything, and also melee fizz and melee damage is kind of the same prefix, suffix, so you know, overall the perfect will be just crit chance and melee fizz definitely, but I'm still working towards my endgame weapon. I haven't found it yet. I really want to find it, guys. So yeah, there are still plenty of upgrades. The armor is just the armor with glancing blows, health, and pretty much anything. Strength, of course, is fantastic to have if you can get it. The helmet is once again glancing blows, health, protection, strength. The belt is glancing blows, health. The boots have movement speed, glancing blows, strength, health, and movement speed. The gloves are glancing blows, increase melee attack speed, health, and whatever you can get. If you can get some kind of more damage on that, do it. The Relic is practically fist damage, crit strike chance, and health. If you can get crit multiply, also not bad, but I would recommend crit strike chance, I think, over the crit multi at this point. The rings are just crit chance, health. If you can get something useful, do it. The other was a crit strike chance, glancing blow, and health as well. So practically I decided to just take glancing blow as much as possible because I'm always in the middle of the action. I always get hit, so I just don't want to get smacked really hard. I want to try to reduce the incoming damage as much as possible, so this is very important. The amulet is basically the Jade amulet base with increased phase, damage list as health, and health. If you can get something like crit on top, that will be absolutely fantastic, guys. For the cheap uniques that you can start with, rolling in the monoliths, this is Titan Heart. Once again, 30% increased health, armor, less damage taken, fantastic armor, but it do not regenerate. So eventually I just switched to this because I get more health on this and glancing blow, so doesn't really does any good for me. Fighting chance are absolutely insane for the early game. Once again, you get increased damage taken, which can be mitigated by the Titan's Heart, but you get 45% increased melee damage, which is absolutely fantastic. It's actually pretty hard to beat these gloves. The helm is pretty much anything. Health, glancing blow chance once again, Isidora's Revenge is fantastic, and the amulet can be bleeding hard. Once again, very early game, when you can find this mod on the amulet, you can use bleeding heart if you have it, because 5% damage leaches health is absolutely fantastic. For the sustain, I would definitely emphasize a glancing blow because you're always pretty close to the enemies. At the same time, as you can see, we can craft a shit ton of leech, which is combined with this, and this can give us an absolutely astronomical amount of damage leech. So pretty decent life pool is also needed to leech all that back, so this is what I would recommend. Once again, guys, we get a 20% block chance because of that, an additional block protection, as well as an additional block protection from this. So block protection is pretty nice. Once you block, you are pretty much nice and safe and sound, but as we are a two-hander, we don't really have that much of a block, and I decided I'm not going to really invest a lot block into this. So there's very basic block here, very basic block here, but in the end, like in the absolute end, I think that I would definitely be investing in the block, especially on the Forge Guard. This is a very powerful Not Steel Aegis. If you want to min max, I would recommend stacking this thing over pretty much anything, because you know, when you're spinning, you get like 21% block. But if you invest a bit more over here, you get like 35% block, which will be somewhat decent block, even with the absence of the shield, which I can recommend. So overall, a leech and glancing blow is what I went for. Of course, capping your resistances, like getting a decent amount of resistance, is very important as well. So this is where my Rebuke and Launch helps, along with the Devouring Orb. So all this combined together make me like a decently tanky, not crazy, but decently tanky, definitely, guys. So that's about it. Well, that's about it for the build, guys. I really hope you liked it. The build itself is pretty cool. It's nothing crazy, no your insane billions of damage, but not many builds can actually do like so much damage in the Last Epoch at this point. Some skills just have way lower flat damage, and this is Warpath, but like I said, it's a combination of two cool skills, which is Warpath like Cyclone and the Raising Strike as a strong single target damage, which is kind of cool in general, interesting mechanics. And if you were a fan of Whirlwind and Cyclone, this is definitely a build you want to check. So once again, guys, thanks for watching, and see you next time.